Calibrating monitors and setting them all up, we have SpectraCals, we have advanced systems for that, but they are moments that in a busy facility you really have to book time out, and book time out is not revenue time. You're actually spending money as opposed to making money. So when you have 20 televisions and they take an hour or so each to calibrate, you're going through a lot of time and money, but it's absolutely necessary, absolutely critical. But what we kept finding was that monitors would either potentially drift, a freelancer would be in there and they'd be touching buttons, and we say, please don't touch buttons. They come in and they touch buttons. And then the senior editors would come in and go, something's not right, but they never really had them up. We can bring up bars, and bars are a great starting point, but as we moved into UHD technology, and then as we moved into HDR technology, the standard SMPTE bars became challenging. We also know that even today SMPTE 709 bars are still used on digital masters in tape alignment modes, but those bars have been dropped now because of digital delivery formats. But those bars are still critical when you're trying to line up an image. So we, in playing with UHD and HDR, struggled to find a tool that we could use quickly to calibrate. And when Craig said, could you bring a gadget? And I had just spent about a month playing with this gadget in the studio because I had seen it at NAB, and I was skeptical. But this eyes and ears moment just kept resonating with me. It was a comment that said, okay, it is about what you see, and if it's audio, what you hear. So the electronic calibration is great, but sometimes we want to do something else. So this DSC Labs, David Corley and his crew, were actually known to me from past incarnations in the multimedia world, where he did some of the best technology that we used to align projectors. After that, he went on to do his business in television and created the grids that we saw. I'd seen this product and I said it's skeptical. So without further ado, what you have is a product called Screen Align, which is this little guy, and I'll just turn it on there, and that's fundamentally it. It's just a little box, but it comes into life when you add this to it. And this has been up on LinkedIn. I think it was a member from Toronto talked about this also. And that was a tipping point where I said, well, let's bring this gadget in. Let's try and see what this gadget will do. And fundamentally, you are asked as a viewer to just align the television with the reel in front of you. And you would think that this is pretty loose. But through experimentation and trial and error, we have actually found it is pretty accurate. The power of this crazy little gadget is you can set up, and by turning it on and putting the image up on your television, very quickly discern of whether you have drifted or not. And we have tested this against properly calibrated monitors, and lo and behold, if everything's correctly set up, we bring up the grid on we have Avids, or our Resolve systems. We present them to the monitors, and we look at it. We drop the Screen Align little wheel in front. Sorry, can you guys see over there what's going on? So we drop the Screen Align wheel in front, and we quickly know whether we're calibrated or not within a degree. This is not as tight as you could get with a SpectraCal or any type of high-end probe and such, but as a facility, when you're wanting to get that assurity of your image content is at least at a benchmark level, this is one of the most powerful little tools that I've seen. I've used the grids and such, and this is an OLED monitor courtesy of Moa at Sony, so this has an HDR component to it, and I'm going to talk a minute about that. I'm not going to play with the settings because this is a calibrated monitor. It's pretty damn close, as you can see, within the 709 color space, and there's the tipping point on it. Once we started to work beyond the 709 mode, we now get challenges. And when working outside of 709 in 2020 color space and in HDR color space, now you have additional challenges that add on top. So it also falls into the category of, if you haven't done it before, it's sometimes hard to guess what the net result will be, particularly when you're not an engineer, you're really somebody who's just trying to apply all this stuff. So I brought the product down, I set it up in front of monitors, and I started calibrating monitors around the facility in HD 709. And that's what you're looking at. My laptop's delivering an HD signal, 1920, 1080. Corley gives you a calibrated pic. You drop it up on your systems. And we played with this because Corley said, well, even if you're slightly colorblind, as long as you match this will balance. So I happen to have an audio engineer who has degraded blue light sensitivity, and that's why he's in audio. So he said, pick me, and we tried it with him, and he was able to balance what he could see, because what he saw in the background was what he saw in the foreground. And he was able to balance them out, and we were watching it, and it's actually doing it. It's actually pulling it into place. I haven't got as far as I want, because I'm now, because of HDR, really looking at this section down here, the brightness and the contrast ratio. To your eye, and going back to SMPTE, your eye is an incredibly discerning device. And we have all the electronics and all the measurement tools we have, but when it comes down to it, even after we calibrated, the calibrator would pull up pictures, and Corley would have a chart of his Corleyettes, 3 different skin tones, and that's what the calibrator, I haven't got a term for that, would use after he was done, just to say, yeah, it actually is right. So you go through all the pros, but you still bring up images. You bring up a Macbeth chart, you compare it to the suite, and you know if you've got a comparison. You're looking at it with eyes and ears. The guy's holding it. This is the reverse Siri. So as far as a gadget goes, it's a pretty cool little gadget, and it's very fast to work with. 709 color space. So working in the studio, I phoned David and said, okay, we're working with 1000 Sony X300 as the reference point for pretty much HDR production right now in television. We have an X300 at the facility, and I said, I need it to be 1000 nits. And I'm just talking to David saying, hey, I know I'm going to be in HDR and 1000 nits. And he said, I can do that, and just like the guy in Star Trek. So he, on the box, you have a knob, and the knob is capable of a variety of settings. So I'm flipping now between D65, well, what am I? D6, that's 6. So that's D65 color, or white point at 1000 nits, and that's at 100 nits level. Television in the home is really about 120 nits is the benchmark going, so there's a little bit of tweak, but SMPTE says 100 nits, so you know there's a little bit of a moment there we're playing with. But David was very quickly able to give me the ability to calibrate it up, so I went, fantastic, now I can go into 1000 nit mode. I'm going to have to switch the TV now into an HDR mode to show you what I was faced with as a realization. It's 14 steps to get the Sony. This is a Sony monitor. This is 14 steps to get to my point. So give me 1 second as I work through here. We're using an HDMI input. So I wrote it down to toolbox, go up to toolbox. And of course these lights aren't lit. Enter. Input settings. Enter HDMI. I'm actually pretty good. This is a moment in the world of HDR. If anybody works in the HDR or 2020 color space, you'll get very used to. You know, I was with Mike Johnson down at Dome, and he sat there in a Sarnoff presentation, another test alignment system, and they had the same issue. They had to pause the presentation while they went through all the steps on the Sony X300 monitors to get them into the different color spaces. Because I'm on a HDMI, I can't switch to 2020 on this monitor. You can on a consumer monitor, but you can't on this monitor. It's only through the SDI, so I'm going to skip over that. What we're going to talk about, though, is the transfer curve. So as we move into HDR, we have transfer curves that are applied to an image, and this is where I got caught. So I'm just going to enter into that, and I'm going to toggle it around. And as you can see, I'll get it to the actual one. Okay, so SMPTE 2084 HDR10 is the PQ curve that we'll be working with in the high dynamic range, as opposed to Dolby Vision, as opposed to HLG. You're going to be one of those 3 right now. In broadcast television, this is a very good place to start. Okay, so all of a sudden I was faced with, well, actually in 709 it's pretty cool. Yep. So we can see that this TV, it's an OLED. So it's not pushing out 1000 nits. It's pushing out 500, but about 500 nits. So all of a sudden I'd phone David and say, okay, David, I need you to make the box now for 500 nits. Can you do that? And he'd say, I can do that. And he'd run away and he'd give me a new little box that I could dial down to 500 nits, which would get that. And then you just balance your color. What I can't show you here because of the configuration is what happens when you move into 2020 color. Because not only do you have the brightness, but with 2020 color, everything gets hugely saturated, of course, because our color spectrum has just grown from 35% to about, well, you can see about 55% is P3 color space, basically, we're working within. That stopped me right there as far as the gadget goes, because I can't use it because this image that I have here doesn't have the corresponding OETF on it. I need this image to actually have the transfer curve built into it so I can display it on the television. The television can decode it and then present it correctly. And then David would have to give me, or Corley's, would have to give me another little wheel. And if I phoned David and said, hey David, I need a 20/20 wheel, he will say, I can do that. And a week later, I'll get a little wheel set down and I'll adjust it. But my point here is, as the gadget goes, it's a great gadget. But moving into the 20/20 and to the HDR mode, the gadget has to upgrade itself to our test standards. And one of the largest stumbling blocks we've had working in HDR and in 20/20 color space is getting something that will actually allow us to work with a reference image. So again, as far as a gadget goes, this shows tremendous promise. If you call up most of the systems available today, they will give you SMPTE bars, they'll give you digital bars, but they won't give you anything with transfer curves built into them yet. Sarnoff, an excellent company out of the States, actually does have that. Test Generators and Good Equipment does have that. But the tools that you're going to have at your disposal, and as you move into 20/20 color space and in HDR, likely won't have that and that point that we're at right now. That tipping point is happening. UHD is definitely prevalent, so the resolution is actually easy to deal with. But this move to a different color space and this move to HDR mode with the different light levels that are capable is challenging. But that's to be sort of expected at the point that we are right now in the industry. So that's my gadget, I think. You know, basically, I think we go.
Yeah, quite happy.
Yeah, shoot.
Is that actually a display, or what are we looking at in that little gadget? Is it a monitor? Is it just a...
It's a little wheel, and you can twist it and rotate it. It's an image that they have calibrated. They've had it printed correctly, and it's calibrated, you know, it's Corley's.
So that's fixed. You can't change...
All I can do is adjust the color temperature of it and the brightness level. What I would need from Corley's now is this wheel to come off, because this is, think of this as the 709 wheel. And I would have to put in it gets weird. In HDR right now, no display can generate full 20/20, short of, I think I'm safe to say, no real display can generate full 20/20 color spectrum. What we can generate is what everybody's calling P3 primaries within a 20/20 wrapper. So we'll stretch, yeah, drives us a little crazy too. It took us a while to figure out that one. So we pull the P3 color space, but it's sitting within the 20/20 wrapper. So what I would need them to do is give us a different wheel that basically represented the P3 primaries, and that would be fine. He doesn't have to worry about the file format. When monitors get up to the 20/20 capability, then he'd give us a full 20/20 wheel. He does have, which is interesting, a slide that says DCI. So I thought, ooh, he's got P3. But I looked at it, it's the same image. But this is a fairly new product for Corley Labs. So I'm working with them right now to take the 709 concept and just move it into the HDR 20/20 concept. But it's a very simple device, but it's elegantly engineered. And the beauty of it is very, very fast. 20 monitors in the facility. We walked it through the facility in about an hour and a half. 12 of the monitors were good, like dead on, and these are broadcast monitors or consumer grade monitors. 12 of them were good. 6 of them we had to quickly adjust and just tweak them into place. And this was halfway, you know, we bring in a calibrator on our Hero monitor once a month or once every other month. But on the rest of the monitors, at the economic levels of post-production in Toronto, you can't afford to do that anymore. So we needed a tool like this that at least gave us the assurance that we were still roughly within our spec, if not damn close to our spec. And I can say after our testing, in 709, we're damn close with this product, and it works very, very well.
Is it actually something we can buy today?
You can buy it. Like any good piece of technology, it's more about the research and development behind it. I can't quote you a price, but I'll tell you it's over $7,000 or over $5,000 Canadian. And what we are talking to Corley about is actually becoming an agency for it. So as a post facility, I have so many clients who do all the work in their facility and then come to us for the final finishing in color. We would go into the client's facility for a very quick charge, because we wouldn't be spending a lot of time, bring a monitor up, and we would make the service available. So they're calling it an agency, and they're debating on how to basically apply this product. SIM could put it in a rental inventory, something you would rent and run through your facilities. It's very easy to use. I can't 100% comment on how good I am, because I haven't had enough hours and I haven't had somebody to train me on the real subtleties of contrast and black and white levels. That's the only thing I'm really missing in it. As far as color integrity, I can get you very fast color balanced on a monitor by just using the control systems. So it is available for rent, or it is available for purchase right now, but they are talking about doing a rental base. And the really interesting thing about this, and I'll go off on a little tangent here, we're talking about doing it as remote capabilities. So if you're in a studio in LA, I can send you a screen align system and get your monitor to screen align mode, and I can be with assurity knowing that they're looking at the same image, because this is a constant. It's a fixed physical device with a light source behind it. Any type of test pattern is subject to the display device. And Corley will debate, it doesn't matter if the display device or the delivery device is truncating that signal somewhat, as long as you can get your distribution device to balance a monitor to that fixed device, you'll be good. And time will tell, but I think he's basically correct. So screen align may find itself into LA, New York, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and you just phone it up and say, hey, I need a screen align done on my monitor systems. And if it works, that will be absolutely fantastic. But this early days of playing with this technology. But it's, other than the rheostat there and the light bulb behind it, that's the only piece of electronic in that thing. Anything else? Good? Okay. Hey, look, 20 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Brian Chawley. I'm with DAV Solutions. We're a systems integrator local to Toronto here. And today we're going to continue on the theme of Sony, our amazing friends from Japan who create some really cool stuff. The displays they're well known for, and everyone probably has some piece of audio equipment around. Another thing that we use a lot of Sony is optical discs, right? They've been in the optical disc game since day one. They co-developed the CD with Philips, which led to the DVD, the Blu-ray, and today we're going to show you the next generation of optical disc storage, which is the Optical Disc Archive Gen 2 system. This is, well, what is it? It is optical disc-based archiving system designed for 100-year file storage. And that's a big deal, because there are long-term file storage systems that exist today, but none of them come close to 100 years. Some of them claim to go for 30 years, but if any of you work with archive systems today, you know that you have to do with certain types of media this awful manual migration every few years. And that's one of the big points of the optical disc archive, is that it is migration-free medium. More on that later. So it is available as a standalone USB drive, which is what I've got here, this sort of long-looking fella. They also have a library unit, what they call the Petacyte, and that one uses fiber channel drives. That's the name of the library unit, and it uses fiber channel drives. The media is in this cartridge format. I'm going to pass this around because it's really cool. Now, I'm showing the Gen 2 version of this drive, and these cartridges are good for, here, you can take a look at that, 3.3 terabytes. They got a stack of disks in them. I'll tell you a little bit about that configuration later. The library units, they start at 30 slots, and they're built in a sort of modular sense, so you can stack them on top of each other, and they go up to total storage capacity of 1.7 petabytes per tower rack. So this is a very dense archiving system. The media, as I mentioned, is migration-free. This is so cool. You know, we work with LTO. We love LTO. It's actually the next thing on the next slide. We love LTO, but you hit this issue every couple of generations when you have tape on LTO, or when you have media on, say, an LTO 4 tape, and you buy an LTO 7 drive, which is about when you'd want to upgrade, you have to do this migration, and they can't even talk to each other, the different generations. So that migration-free medium, I can take a Gen 2 optical disc archive cartridge, and years from now, long after we're all gone from the earth, someone can pop it into a Gen 28 reader, and they'll be able to read the files, no problem. As I said, we love LTO. It is one of the great diplomacies of the enterprise data storage industry. It's a time when multiple manufacturers actually came together and agreed on some standards. And I know that this is an organization of people that like standards, right? It benefits from long-term support from multiple manufacturers. Basically, you know, when you buy into that system, it's a great thing, you know, there's a lot of good things about it. It's universal between the vendors, so you can combine, sort of mix and match your hardware as needed. And the latest generations of LTO, they're very dense. They have tons of storage capacity. So it's very impressive. Plus, there's a lot of adoption from third-party developers. The software available to manage your LTO archives is very robust, very mature. So we love LTO. And if we love it so much, why optical? Well, there's that 100-year shelf life. Again, even under a proper regimen of migrating LTO tapes generation to generation, the best you can count on is a 30-year shelf life for those tapes. But this, with an optical disc archive, you write it once, it stays on the shelf for 100 years. You don't have to migrate that again. The cartridges themselves, as you can see them going around, they're more robust than an LTO cartridge. They're impervious to dust. The discs themselves are water resistant, and they can deal with temperature and humidity shifts, unlike an LTO cartridge, which uses magnetic tape, and it's a little more sensitive to that kind of stuff. It uses phase change recording, which is a cool term I just wanted to say, but it basically is not susceptible to magnetic interference because, as we know, when we burn a disc, the laser literally changes the physical state of the disc. It's not magnetic like tape. It's truly burned into the disc. And it's burned with a laser, but that laser doesn't actually touch anything, so there's no contact when you do read and write on the drive. Anyone here who works with LTO tapes, you know that after a while you need to clean the heads of the drive, or the tapes themselves can become corrupted by, you know, bad reads and stuff like that. It's not an issue. It actually, as a side note, Sony has verified that this has the best error correction rate in the industry for any sort of media. Again, under Y-Optical, I can't stress this enough, backwards compatible. You don't have to migrate your media generation to generation. And it's cool, you get random access to 3.3 terabytes. You know, with sequential tape-based media, if you want file number 1 and then file number 1000, you're going to have to wait while your tape goes, and you get to that file. But with optical, you have the ability to randomly seek, just like on any other optical disc. This is very cool. It uses the UDF file system. Now, in the LTO space, we have sort of two schools. We have the TAR, which is when you don't have a file system, and it's just a way to put stuff on the tape. And then we have LTFS, which is an emerging open source file system. They're both great, but neither one is perfect. TAR locks you into the vendor that sold you whatever software does the operation of the tape. And with LTFS, it's open source. So, you know, Apple could release a software update that breaks it. They've been known to do that from time to time. And it's up to the community to sort of maintain it. Plus, we don't have a lot of long-term data about how LTFS holds up over time. So what we do know, though, is that UDF, it's a file system we've all used, whether or not you know it. It's the file system when you pop a CD in your computer and you see the audio files come up. That's UDF. It's very, very secure. Also very accessible for developers. You know, people know how to work with it. So it's very easy for developers to adopt this file system and this technology. Now, speaking of the technology, I want to go a little bit more into the technology of the drive and the cartridges itself, because we're technology lovers, right? Each cartridge contains 11 of these 300 gigabyte raw archival disks. Now, a raw archival disk isn't something you can walk into the store and buy, but the disk itself is an evolution of the Blu-ray disc. They found a way using that special type of recording that I'll go into in a minute, and adding extra layers to, yeah, you got it, it's display only though. It doesn't work, I tried. to fit these discs in there. So you get 3.3 terabytes uncompressed per cartridge. The cartridge is about 5 inches square, so it's a slightly bigger, you know, it's the disc size cartridge, but we think it's worth the trade-off in size. And as far as the laser goes, this is the really cool part. So it records, I don't have a pointer because I'm pointing at a screen that's way brighter than the thing I'm pointing at. But basically, with your regular optical discs, it only records in the groove tracks, but this one records on both the groove and the land tracks. Plus, we have 2 sides on the disc. Each side's got 3 layers, and it got 4 heads, each with a 2-channel laser. So it's actually reading 8 streams of information off the disk at the same time. What does that mean? It means you can write and read to this thing at a very impressive speed, especially for optical media. You know, traditionally optical is regarded as being very slow, and you know, we think ODA Gen 2 solves this issue. We'll go into the exact speeds. I mean, you can get approximately 280 megs a second read, and 140 write because it does verification as part of the writing pass, which is nice. We like verification. Want to talk about the saltwater test. The folks at Sony, they decided to do a test, a disaster that an LTO library would not be able to recover from. If you were to if there were to be a flood, your LTO library would be gone. That would be it. But they took some cartridges and they put them in salt water for 19 days and they let them sit there. And they also threw in some standard office staples just as a sort of control. You know, who archives the staples? But so the staples had rusted. They pulled the discs out, took them out of the cartridge, cleaned them off, rinsed them with fresh water, put them into a new cartridge, popped them into the drive, and the drive was happy. They were able to read the files. They were even able to write new files to the cartridge. It's like nothing had happened. And so just a little comparison on the speed, because I think every presentation needs to have a part where there's like lines going across the screen, bar lines. I'll bring up a little bar graph here. So a lot of places, you know, we deal with a lot of archive customers, you could say, I guess. And a lot of places are still on LTO 5, and they're getting just above gigabit Ethernet speeds, about 140 megabytes per second on LTO 5. LTO 6 has a much denser tape, so you get more data on there, but still the speeds, not quite. 160 megabytes speeds for LTO 6. LTO 7 was a great improvement, 300 megabytes per second, or over 300 megabytes per second. And that's the neighborhood that ODA Gen 2, rather Optical Disk Archive Gen 2 is in. That gets you about 280 megabytes per second read speed. So it's a really, really solid read speed. The reason I'm not bringing up the write speed specifically, we know that optical disk writes at 140, exactly half of its maximum read speed is its maximum write speed. But with the LTOs, there's a lot of factors depending on your configuration, what software you're using, what kind of checksums you're generating. So it's hard to get an exact write speed for the LTOs. Going to talk a bit about the Petasite library. Again, they've created 3 different types of units. Now, they all start with the master unit. That's your base, and it's got the robot in it. And then you can add on to that as you need. You can stack up to 6 units in a tower, and you can do a 60-slot unit. So that adds 60 slots, plus it has room for 4 more drives, so you can increase your capacity and your throughput, or you can just increase your capacity with a 100-slot unit. But you can mix and match any way you want, and the robotics are really cool. I encourage you all to Google Optical Disk Archive, which you probably will anyways, and they have a great video showing how the robotics work. And it's cool. You stack one on top, and the robot can just move up into the next tower. It's very Terminator. I don't know. And I mentioned it goes to 1.7 petabytes capacity. That's 535 slots per rack. Now, how do you interface with the library? You want people to talk to the library, right? They need some sort of server in the middle to provide that software. Now, Sony has created a couple of utilities. There's one, Sony File Manager is the most basic available utility for that, and that lets 5 users log in, access, manage, putting stuff onto the Petasite library. However, they did integrate with some third-party vendors as well. And this is really good news. You know, like third-party support, developer support is a huge thing for helping a new sort of spec or new standard take off. So you'll be pleased to know that they integrate with a lot of people. Now, this is Gen 2, right? There was a Gen 1. Sorry?
There is a Gen 1.
There is, it's true, there is a Gen 1, yes. In 2013, they came out with Gen 1, so they've actually been working on this for a long time. But with Gen 2, they've really improved and focused sort of their trajectory for the product. But Gen 1 was a great learning experience, and it's a great product itself, don't get me wrong. But it gave them a chance to integrate with vendors like Zendata. We know Zendata, we love them for archive. They make this big sort of catch-all archive where you just, if you're not familiar with it, you just sort of drag your files onto a big sort of virtual drive, and it just manages putting it all over to LTO or now optical disk archive. It works with Storage DNA. Storage DNA is maybe the smartest of the archive systems because it can read metadata out of project files, and it can do all this automated workflow stuff. It's very cool, and they love it. CatDV, Squarebox, it's not really an archive system, it's more of a media management system, but a lot of you might have run into CatDV, and there's plenty of options to make CatDV interface with the optical drive. Avid Interplay, of course. This is cool. Imagine Products, they make pre-roll post, which is generally considered one of the entry-level archiving softwares, but they're right on board with optical disk. They even have a thing where you can write to both LTO on one side and ODA simultaneously, which is cool because a lot of production's insurance require that you have two different backup formats, so that solves that. And I think Sony Content Manager deserves a spot on this slide. They've created a tool that sort of fills the gap between a basic filing utility and something ridiculous, like, well, I shouldn't say ridiculous, but a full-fledged integrated solution like CatDV. And Content Manager lets you, do some basic tagging, metadata. You can view proxies. You can manage some automated workflows, manage multiple archives. So it's a good tool as well. So it's good news. There's lots of third-party compatibility for the thing. The medium is really exciting because it is optical. And I think the coolest thing to do would just be to show you how it works. So we're going to do a demo. I have a computer. This long fella here is the drive, and it's got a cartridge in it. And if you see here, the cartridge, it just shows up on the desktop just like a hard drive. You see? And I can browse. And it's very much like browsing on an optical drive. It's just that the transfer speeds are faster. So I can browse right in the Finder. And that's a great thing. I could walk up to a 500 slot library, pull a single one of these cartridges out, and stick it in my standalone drive. Don't need any special management software. I can always access the files on that drive. Anyone who works with archive systems, sometimes there's a barrier between you and the file you want. And it's like trying to use this software to make it work and do everything just right. So this is great. This is something unique to optical disk archive where you can just pop it in there and see the files, no matter how they got on there. And speaking of see the files, I just want to show some of the advantages to random read capabilities. If you pop an LTO tape that's LTFS formatted in, you can mount it in the Finder. I don't know has anyone ever tried that? It's interesting. Because you'll click on this folder and it'll spin for 5 minutes while the tape rewinds, and you click on that folder and it'll spin for 5 minutes while the tape rewinds. But here I can even open up the media files. And so this is a 1080p ProRes clip of a Beyonce commercial. And I think it's pretty cool that I can just play that back live off of the thing. I can even skip around the clip, see if I skip to the end. And then I come back to the beginning. This is something that it's not possible with other archival formats. The random access is very cool. Let's up the ante a bit. Move from ProRes to uncompressed. Yes, it is just 1080p. I know we've been talking about 4K and HDR, and those data rates are for future generations of these great products. But let's see here. There we go. See? So I can play back uncompressed 1080p right off my archival, my optical disk archive cartridge. That's very cool. What about getting media onto the cartridge? You can drag and drop from the Finder, but it's best to use this little optical disk archive filer utility that comes with the thing. And it just gives you a view of your file system. And here I've got a gigabyte or so of some cool stock footage. And I'd like to throw it in there. and say go for it. And it just starts doing its thing. And writes the stuff to tape. Or not tape. I've said writes to tape so many times. There it goes, and 90%. Probably just finishing up. And we're done. And that's it. It's on archive. So again, anyone who's worked with a tape-based system, dragging a folder like that to tape, you know, is not quite as simple an operation as this. So I think that really speaks to the benefits of this system. But don't get me wrong, we still love LTO. So that is what I've got to show you about Optical Disc Gen 2. We just got some great news. They are starting to ship this month. So this is a real thing. It really exists, and you can check it out. You can we have some flyers over by the Sony box there if you want a little more information. I'm here. Chris, my boss, is here, and Mo from Sony is here. But are there any questions before we wrap it up? Any questions about anything you've seen here?
Is it rewritable disc?
Sorry?
Is it rewritable disc?
The Gen 1 cartridges, they had a rewritable version. Gen 2 so far is read once, or no, sorry, write once, read many. So they're just, it's a single use worm. Yeah, worm, right. Yes?
Is it able to record and reproduce 12-bit files for digital cinema?
Record or reproduce 12-bit?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I apologize. Like, do you mean like to store that data on there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any. Oh.
12-bit.
Real time? I would go ahead and say no. But if there's someone who knows a bit more about this, they could. Yeah.
It's not designed for that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you got creative, you could put like 8 of these drives into one of the library units, and you could use it as nearline if you wanted. But that would be something to ask your local Sony representative about.
Thank you.
Okay, anyways, that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, again, my name is Brian Young, and I'm the product manager for video and production technologies at VizTech. VizTech is pretty well known for selling camera products. In fact, that's one, even in the description for tonight's meeting, they talked about I was going to show some camera gadgets. I did bring one, but we actually sell a lot of other gadgets. In fact, sometimes I think I'm the king of gadgets, because that's all I do is have gadgets around me all day and open new gadgets and get to play with new things. So I brought a couple of things that I thought would be kind of fun and different to show. One of the things, too, is a lot of people don't know about VizTech is this is actually our 40th anniversary, so we've been around for a long time. And we actually started out as a lighting company and then moved into photo and then video technologies. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about some cool lighting products as part of it, and then finish off with a camera gadget. So without further ado, then I'm going to just go into the first slide. I just have to get my slide remote. I knew I forgot something. And talk about this product from a company called Light and Motion. Light and Motion is a company that if you ride a 10-speed bike around the city, you might be familiar with. They originated selling bike lights and then moved into actually selling underwater dive lights. And now they're moving into professional photo and video lighting products. And so they have a line of new products called Stella Pro, and they're very, very cool lights. They're very, very cool technology. And so I just thought I'd talk about them a little bit, because they're different than virtually any other LED or any other lighting product basically out there. Now, this picture that you can see up here is actually the front wheel of my car, driving through a mud puddle. We played around with this light when we had that very warm day back in February, and we were playing around with the light. And I wanted to come up with something that we could actually show off, how these lights are really different than virtually any other lighting product. And one of the things is that they're completely waterproof. In fact, they're completely submersible down to 100 meters of water pressure. So they're very, very, very durable and rugged design, and they're ultra portable as well. And then the last key feature really of the light is that they're internally self-powered. So they actually have a lithium-ion battery inside the light fixture itself. And so there's a couple different models of the lights, but you can see this is the smallest of the lights, and I have in my hand here. This is called a 1000, and puts out actually 1,000 lumens. It's actually a quite bright light that you can see here on the ceiling. I'm bouncing it off the ceiling onto myself. I can dim the light as far as just dimming different lighting degrees. It's not fully dimmable in percentage points, but it goes to different lighting levels. But it is quite bright, and it comes with diffusion and comes also with a little Fresnel type instrument to put on the front of it. As well, there are different barn doors and other different lighting adapters that you can put on it. The great thing is that they also have larger lights. So this is a 2,000 lumen light. And this one you can see that actually comes with a different type of adapter. So I can actually put this on any type of bar or railing or whatever. I can hang this anywhere that I like. And that's the other thing that's very cool about these lights is they make different mounting to be able to put these lights wherever you need to put them. And so this one's just got a little bar mount ring on it rather than a stand mount. Again, this light's putting out 2,000 lumens. And these are also available in kits, so you can get a small, build a small little lighting kit. And that's probably another thing about the light is that you can build a small lighting kit like I brought here. I brought all of the lights in just this small little Nanook case. So you can build a full lighting kit. This instrument is a 5,000 lumen instrument, and the 5,000 and there's also a 7,000 and a 10,000. In those larger instruments, we can actually switch out the light engine. So the light engine nominally will be, today it's 5,000 degrees, but as of NAB time, they're going to be standardized at 5,600 degrees. So they'll have a 5,600 degree standard light engine. And then they'll have optional 3,200 degree light engines. And so again, this particular light, I'm just going to click ahead a slide here. So again, we got the 1,000, the small one, the 2,000. This is the 5,000. This 5,000 actually has a power meter built right into the back of the light. And so you can see here that it actually gives you a readout of how many lumens the light is outputting. And then it actually gives you a power degree in minutes, a time in minutes of how many minutes are left on the battery life. And so as you actually turn the light on, okay, so right now I'm only at 2,000 lumens, right, on this thing. So I've got a reading right now, fully charged, of 224 minutes of battery available on this light. So that's an incredible amount of time for a light that now I can carry anywhere into the field. And you can feel that this light is very light and portable, yet very rugged, durable, and can stand out in a hurricane or in a snowbank or be thrown in a river and shone back up at your subject or basically carted anywhere. And you don't have to worry about being portable power or a Jenny or anything else there. Obviously, with the daylight balance ones, they would vie against a traditional HMI type fixture for, again, lumen output. And, but again, for portability and self-contained battery, you're never going to get that in an HMI. Obviously, you'd have a huge ballast and whatnot that you'd have to bring along with it. So again, this one I'm going to go up and show the total lumen output. So I'm going up all the way to 5,000 degrees. So you can see out of this little fixture that I'm basically holding in the palm of my hand, I'm getting a very accurate, high CRI light output and 5,600 degrees, and I can basically take it anywhere and use it however I like. So next, I think, just before I finish that, I was just going to talk again about these little I'm just going to use this one because they do make these little different diffusers and this everything. This is a little thing that looks kind of almost like a baby soother that you would give to a baby or whatever. But this is actually a nice little ball that you can take out even if you're doing photos or something, street photography. This is something now you can hold the light wherever you need to, and you can see even where I'm positioning the light, it's giving me a nice soft, nice soft kind of light wherever you need it. So very quick and easy. So if you're doing like any type of street photography, anything like that, very easy and quick to work with, and take it anywhere type lights. So the next light, just because we're sort of talking about this, is actually from a different company, and the company is called LumiCube. And again, these LumiCubes are designed to be insanely small. So this is the whole product. And basically this is, you can just throw a bunch of these in your bag. These are very inexpensive. They sell for about $150 approximately. So very, very inexpensive. They can connect to your iPhone or your digital camera, and they can be triggered via Bluetooth to be a strobe for a flash. So you can set them up as being a flash for your iPhone and do more sophisticated flash photography by having additional flashlights. Or you can also turn the light on to continuous mode. And again, you can dial up the brightness, but out of a very, very, very small light, you're getting a lot of light. So we kind of call this the light anywhere light. Anywhere you need light, you can take this thing, you can throw these in your bag. Again, these are internally rechargeable. They have a lithium battery inside and just recharge off of a small USB connection. So very, very portable. These are waterproof as well, and they're waterproof down to about 100 feet. So, but basically are going to take anything that you're going to throw at them. You can even throw them in a small pond or something like that, give you a bit of light reflection or stuff up out of the water. And again, very, very compact and easy to use. You could use them for your camera, your phone as a light for your phone. A lot of people use these. We actually sell mounts for drones, for like Phantom 4, Phantom 3. So they actually clip just onto the side of the landing gear. And now you can put one light on each side. And so now you can use the drone for search and rescue or doing night photography or things like that by mounting the little lights on the side of your drone. And again, for cameras like GoPros or different types of action cameras. And again, as I said, you could hook it up to your DSLR even and trigger it with the Bluetooth even for flash photography or for continuous photography. So it's a cute little on-camera light, or even more inexpensive. You can throw a bunch of these in your bag. You can use them to light different areas on set, like if you needed to light under a table or something and you just need a little kicker somewhere. These are great little lights, self-powered. They can go basically anywhere. So pretty cool technology and something really different, right, that you've probably never seen before. So I thought I would bring those along. So I decided to stay in the lighting vein. I decided to bring another light along. This is called the LEDGO Versatile Kit. So in this versatile kit, the reason that they call it versatile is it can be used in a multiple of different ways. And you can see in the pictures here on the bottom of the slide that it comes with these tiles that are actually completely flexible and can even be rolled up. So if we needed to roll it up and make it into a tube, we could actually put it inside of a China ball or something like that to make a nice little soft light. They also have Velcro around the edges, so they can be Velcroed, or you could use masking tape or something to stick them up on a wall or the ceiling of an elevator or a small space inside of a car. You could dish them in on the lap of the driver in the car or something like that and get some nice kicker light or up light, things like that. So they can be used in all these different tight spaces and areas because they're very flexible and versatile. But as well, you get these two rigid frames. And these frames basically snap together. And I mean, we're a large lighting company. We sell a lot of different lighting products. So probably one of the most well-known lighting products out there in the industry is a like KinoFlow 4 banks and KinoFlow Divas. But the problem with those lights, traditionally, especially the fluorescent kind, is they're difficult to travel with. You can't fold them up, and obviously the tubes are very fragile. Well, these actually collapse down so that both these frames, the two tiles, the controller, and even the lighting stands can all come in this soft case. So you could basically have a foldable 4 bank that you can take anywhere with this technology. And it all comes in this one little case. So we can set it up either like a traditional 4 bank soft light, or we can set it up more like a Diva type light in a more square type configuration. We will be getting just shortly some extension cables, so they now can be extendable. So the one controller, we could actually even separate the two lights. So although we include the two frames, which would be large, basically now I could put one in the other frame, and now I could actually build a 2-light kit out of the single light. Right? Obviously not as much power output, but I can make it into a 2-light kit. So again, these are also waterproof. Okay, so you can submerge them. So I have customers that are using them for like wedding photography and stuff. They'll put them in the goldfish pond in front of the restaurant or whatever like that, and coming up under the water and creating this like nice glow or whatever. Completely submerging the lights. So I'm just going to stick it here for a second because this backing, which comes in, it just has the Velcro to stick it onto, and talk about the controller for a minute just so that you can see. So the controller is really nice. It comes with this little sled that allows you to take the power supply off the floor so that this isn't sitting down in the water if you are going to use AC power. And it has just a standard V-lock on it. So if you do want to use a V-lock battery, this will power off of a V-lock standard 14-volt battery. Or there's also an adapter plate that you can buy as a separate accessory. And that adapter plate will use Sony style NPFL size batteries. So two of those 7.2s come together as a 14.4 and will power this light in the field. So you can use even your prosumer or camera battery lights to be able, or batteries to be able to power the light. Then the controller, I can actually control the color temperature. So it's fully bicolor. So I can tune the light however I need to tune it. And then as well, I can tune the brightness of the light. So fully dimmable and adjustable. So nice and easy and portable and ultra lightweight. It also comes with this unique yoke mount. And the thing about the yoke mount is that we can very quickly and easily adjust the lights or the panels to go at whatever angle that we want. So very, very quick and easy to work with. So if you're doing, oh, I want to do a tabletop shot, now you have a nice overhead 4 bank basically. Oh, I want to do like this way and have a nice beauty light this way, I can do that. Or if I want to have a vertical beauty light, I can set it up like that and just adjust the stand height. So very versatile in the way that they operate because there are multiple lights kind of all in one. Very small, lightweight, portable, easy to transport and carry around. So very, very flexible and versatile. One last point about the controller as well. The controller has a stand mount built into it, so the controller can be based onto the stand. There is on the side these little buttons, and these little buttons allow you to also tune in. You can buy a separate option, which is basically acts almost like a hotspot or a wireless Wi-Fi connection point. Access point, and basically you can set up these lights. Any of the LEDGO lights can be connected to that one single hotspot, and now I can control them with an app on my phone. So if I need to dim the light or change the color temperature or whatever, that can all be done remotely with the app on your phone with that optional access point or Wi-Fi hotspot. So very, very flexible and easy to work with, and I think I've covered those 3 lights pretty well now. Okay, so I'm going to go now into the final product that I brought. We still have time, right? Talk about one more. So this is another little product. As I say, we deal with a lot of gadgets. And so one of the gadgets that we brought in a few years ago was a product called Movi. And it was one of the first electronic stabilizer gimbals, and it was a fairly large gimbal originally designed to carry cameras that were in the 10 to 15 pound ratio of weight, total weight, so camera and lens combined. Previous to that, we actually sold Steadicam products as well, which Steadicam's the original kind of product that was developed to stabilize cameras. And although many cameras today have now even optical stabilization built into the camera, they'll talk about how they have multi-axis optical stabilization, typically that is designed more for micro vibrations. This unit is designed so that I can actually turn on the electronic gimbal. So just let me get it going here. And it's active. So now I can do those sweeping type of shots. So this is, I can actually have the camera pan along, do some nice things. I actually have a little joystick that I'm operating with my thumb, so I can have the camera go up and down. So I can make the camera completely float and do how to capture whatever kind of angle and shot that I want. And I'm doing this with a small compact mirrorless camera. We've been selling a lot of these cameras to broadcasters because they're using them a lot for B cameras or for interview cameras because they have a Super 35 sensor on them, and basically they give them that shallow depth of field look. But now having the ability to be able to pick up and run and gun with that camera, you can even put it into what some people call the microphone mode. So you can go like this and come right in on somebody and do some very unique type shots with the camera on this. And now you're just supporting the weight of the entire rig basically with one hand. There's also different modes, so I can, by clicking the button, I can put it into different modes. So this one is just the up-down mode. If I click once more, then I can now power left and right. And if I go twice, 1 second. So, and now I can put it into a Dutch tilt mode just by clicking twice. So I can basically now position the camera however I would want to do that. So now I have a huge amount of capability of being completely portable. And again, the price point of this and ease of use of it and ease of balancing is just amazing. It's not a high-end professional tool that you need a lot of skill to be able to balance it, use the rig. And again, the affordability of the cameras that you're putting onto it make it just that much more useful. So this particular crane is designed for mid-level cameras. So put things like the Sony A7 series cameras or Panasonic Lumix, the GH4s or the GH5s, or you can put Canon M series. We have put as much as a 5D on it, but you have to put a pretty lightweight lens on it in that scenario, and Nikon series cameras. But there is also a smaller version which is called a Crane M, and the Crane M can hold a variety of cameras. Just before I get to that, you can see here's a picture again of the microphone mode. Just basically you can hold it completely facing forward. And then this down in the left-hand corner here, this is a little optional handlebar that you can buy. So if you are finding that your arm is getting stressed by holding the amount of weight that you need to put on the rig, you can buy this little handlebar. And now with the handlebar, you can extend the weight across two hands. And you can set it up different ways. Like right now, he's got the handles down, but you could have the handles up if you want. And so if you're going to be holding more mid-level shots, or in the way he's got it now, it's better for high shots. But if you flip the handles the other way, it's better if you're going to go do low shots, things like that. So very versatile. And then when you put these handles on it as well, you can also do what's called the doorway mode. So you flip the thing around, and now the rig will be hanging from one of the handlebar handles, and now you can go across like this. So it's like a briefcase, and you can float in and out through doorways, tight spaces, things like that with the camera. Also up in this corner where I'm showing you that there is also a mechanical wireless remote for it. So again, I could, if I had one of those with me right here, I could set the camera even up on this rig just as it is right now. I've just got it on a lighting stand. And say I was trying to videotape a presenter or something like that, I could actually remotely pan and tilt the camera and whatnot with that little wireless remote. Or also I have a remote that can be built into the phone as well, so you can download an app and you can control it as well through the app. And then this is the final slide on the Crane M. So the Crane M is a little bit smaller, so it can basically go up to probably the biggest camera would be an A7 type camera, but with a slightly smaller lens than this, like a pancake lens or something like that on it, or the A6300 type series cameras. Also, we can put a GoPro or whatever, or your phone. So you can actually put any of those devices. It comes with all of the mounts, so that one day you could be using it with your phone, the next day a GoPro, next day a Sony Action Cam, the next day a small mirrorless camera. So again, depending on the size of the unit. So these kind of extend the range of capabilities to smaller cameras that typically we haven't had before. We haven't had this type of camera motion and mobility that we ever in the industry before for these types of cameras. So it's really opening up a lot of people. And in fact, as fast as we can bring these in, they're out the door. So like it's kind of crazy. So any questions about any of these products that I've talked about?
Can you see the LCD display at the back of the camera?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't turn it on right now, but I can, yeah. So very quickly and easily. So again, I'm just going to go back into this mode. And so I would just turn the camera on here, put on my glasses again. Yeah. So as I'm basically doing the unit, you're just looking at the camera display on the back. Yeah. Right. Very, very cool. So again, we're seeing that, like especially in the broadcast, which SMPTE is primarily broadcast, but we have a lot of broadcasters that are using these small cameras. Maybe they're for stringers, maybe they're for other applications or B&C cameras or whatever, but they can pick up shots with this small little rig by using that camera that they would not get with their large shoulder mount traditional broadcast type cameras. Yep.
This still, like, does it have external power available to it as well, or is it only the internal?
It has basically the charger that connects to it, but the light can be used while it's charging. So it just plugs in with the little adapters. There's a little, with the smaller lights, it's just a little wall wart. And with the larger 5,000 and 7,000, it's a little bit larger. But one other point that you kind of reminded me of, just to go back for 1 second, is within the Stella series, there is this other new light. This light is basically actually smaller than the 5,000 because there's no battery in it. So it's basically, up to here. And this is a 10,000 lumen light that's corded. And in this case, the light is IP56. So it can still be out in the pouring torrential rain, whatever, and still have water flowing through it. It's just not fully submersible, and it does have a small fan in it to cool it. So there is that very small fan that's going in the light. But this is a corded version of the light that's putting out 10,000 lumens. So that one has to be plugged in all the time, but the 1, 2, 5, and 7 can all be self-powered with internal battery. Any other questions? Thank you for your time. Thank you.
So my presentation is on innovation in grid-tied solar systems. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Sorry. That was a quick switch, unlike the other ones. There's 3 things I really like about solar. I just find it really neat. First one is that solar energy, the sun portion of it, the input to the system is free. It comes free from the sun. So like I'm a little bit of a cheap guy. I like free stuff. Like solar is free. I love that part about it. The second part about it is if you set it up right, it can make you independent from the grid. So if you set it up right, you have a power outage, you have a little bit of independence. And the third thing I like about it is the power it produces is green. So it doesn't create any greenhouse gases. It's good stuff. So, but as a guy like me who wants to put one of these things on his roof, solar system, there's kind of a problem. And here's the problem. So you can put a system together that'll work when the grid goes down, but look at the cost. It's pretty expensive. Now you can put a system together that doesn't protect you when the grid goes down, but it costs like, 15 grand less. So, as a guy who wants to put one of these things on his roof, you're always wondering, like, where do I compromise? Do I give up the security of having protection, or do I just go straight for, saving money? So let me just take you through these systems really quick. So this is a typical PV. PV stands for photovoltaic, which basically means panels that do electricity. There's other type of panels out there that do hot water. I actually have some hot water ones on my roof currently, but eventually I do want to put PV up, just waiting for the right time. So, your sunlight hits your panels go down, there's like a little safety disconnect switch, goes to your inverter takes your DC from the panels, converts it to AC, takes that AC, feeds it to your main breaker panel, then it goes to all your loads, and then it goes out to the utility. So what happens when the power goes out, your utility gets cut right here, right away within 10 seconds, this inverter shuts down and you drop all your loads. So, and the reason why that occurs is just if there's a guy from Ontario Hydro out here working, he needs to be protected from your solar system. So right away it cuts it off. So that's the grid tied with no batteries. Next system that's significantly more expensive and more sophisticated, I'll take you through it. So sunlight hits the panels, goes to a little disconnect switch, goes to a charge controller. Charge controller decides whether it's going to charge the batteries or feed back to the inverter. Hopefully your batteries are good and charged. Got another disconnect switch there. These batteries are usually lead acid. You have to do a lot of maintenance to them. They require watering. You have to vent them. You have to replace them a couple times. They're a lot of maintenance. So you hit your inverter, goes out to another switch, goes to your main panel, you're good, out to the utility. Now you'll notice in this configuration, you actually have this second panel. So this is the panel where you put all your backup loads to. So you'd plug in your fridge, maybe a sub pump if you had one, your TV if you think it's important enough. Maybe not. Netflix account. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, that's the thing. So here's the gadget. Here's the thing I'm actually here to talk about, the thing that actually changes the whole system. So this system, and I'll take you through it in a second, but the Gadget Night is actually this little device right here. And this is a little fancy inverter. It's made by a company called SMA. They're out of the States. And basically what happens in this particular system, well, I'll just take it through it. So sunlight hits your panels. It feeds your inverter, gets converted from DC to AC. You get a nice little disconnect switch, goes to your panel, out to your loads, and then out to the utility. So what happens in this system, if your utility gets cut, your inverter again shuts down within 10 seconds to protect the line worker out there. But the cool thing about this particular system is this little guy here has this extra little option. So you can flick this one switch, and within 30 seconds, there's actually a countdown on the inverter. It'll click in, and you'll actually get access to the power from your panels. And you only get one outlet, and it's only 12 amps, and it's only 1,500 watts, but it's enough to power your fridge, keep it going for a couple hours, cover your sub pump, your internet, maybe your other loads. The only downside, of course, is it only works when the sun's up. But the upside is it's only 20K. So it's a real innovative thing for people like me who really don't want to pick between having the protection in a grid-tied solar system versus a non-grid-tied. So, yeah, and that's it. The only other thing that may help us in the future with this kind of stuff is some of these new electric cars have nice lithium batteries in them. And those lithium batteries, they're really good maintenance-wise. They're sealed. You don't have to look after them. So yeah, any questions? Go ahead.
So you've got the system.
Yeah. Which I
I
don't, but I will at some time. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Why can't, when the power goes down, the system just disconnect from the grid?
Yeah, they really haven't got there yet. So there is a thing called fast shutdown. The problem is they just don't know where in the system the hydro worker might be working. And the concern is the hydro worker might be somehow working all the way up to this inverter. And we know they're not going to touch this DC because it's on the roof, but there's a possibility that he could get involved in there. So the spec has to shut down the actual inverter.
Yeah. We lose power. I live in Thornbury.
Right.
Outside of Collingwood, we lose power Oh, once a month.
Once a month, yeah.
For a couple hours.
Yeah.
And everybody has generators.
Yeah, and they all kick in, and
Make a lot of
yep,
noise.
yes, everybody loves them, right? Yeah. So,
Okay.
any other questions? Brian?
What are your thoughts on Tesla Powerwall?
So Tesla Powerwall, couple things. Actually, I was at the Green Living Show on Saturday. I was talking to the Tesla dealer, and a couple things. So the Tesla Powerwall 1, it's about 14 grand. So 7 grand for the actual unit, and another 7 to get it installed. But like, personally, I wouldn't bet against Tesla. You generally lose when you bet against this guy. So I think they're interesting. And that's kind of when we go back to the solar car, that's kind of what that is. Like the Powerwall is really finding a way to utilize these same batteries that are in these cars. The Powerwall 2, there's no deployments in Canada yet. Powerwall 1, I bet there's about 500 deployments in Canada. The Powerwall 2, they haven't released it yet in Canada. And the actual panels, they made some panels that look like shingles. They found that those panels, they basically struck a bunch of them together in series, and they're having problems with them. Like one goes, you can't figure out which one it is. And you have like 60, and there's 50 wires in between. So it's coming along. But for the most part, the Powerwall stuff's vaporware, at least the Powerwall 2 stuff. But I think it's a good way to go. It's a battery. They're lithium-ion batteries. They're way better than these lead-acid things. So it's definitely the future, hopefully. And it gives you some protection. One of the things with the Powerwall is you can do offsetting. So you can bring in power at a lower price and push it out at a higher price. But right now, I did the math on it. It's $300 a year. So it takes a long time to make up that 14K or so. Yeah.
Didn't Tesla just buy a company in the past couple of months that actually does solar for themselves?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, those panels. Yeah, the Solar City. Yeah. They just, and the funny thing with the stuff from Tesla, it's kind of vaporware until you actually see it. Like, they take a long time to actually deploy and actually see something working. So, but they're coming. Yeah. So.
When you said about 20K, that's panels and all the peripheral that goes with.
Yeah, roughly. That's, and it's coming down. It comes down every day, right? That's kind of a rough estimate, but yeah, about 20K. Yeah. There is an easier system than this where it goes right from these, and it has microinverters, it goes right out to the grid, doesn't even touch your stuff. They're less expensive. And they're under something in Ontario called the Feed-in Tariff Program, which is this subsidy program. It ends in December. And those ones, you can't access the power of it either. Like, you're selling it back to the grid, but you can't even touch it. So it can't even touch your panels. You get nothing. Like, at least on this system, you're offsetting your own power usage first before it goes to the grid. With the micro feed-in tariff systems, you don't get anything out of it. It's just straight to the grid. So, but it's cheaper, for sure. Yeah.
What's the return on investment and, say, getting paid for providing the electricity?
Yeah, so 5 to 8 years, depending on how much you spend on the system, roughly.
Craig, that other system that you showed, this one,
Yeah.
there's no battery in this particular.
No batteries. Nope, just it only works when the sun's up. You only got the one plug. Yeah. But it might get you through the day, right? And for me, like, the power hasn't gone out enough times in my area to worry about this. I think twice in my life I've lost hydro in my house. So. Yeah. Well, my cottage is a different story. I have a Jenny up there. Yeah.
If you had potentially like an electric car in this kind of situation, is there any way to take the power back out of the car and go back?
The technology doesn't exist exactly yet, but we think so. Eventually it'll be something. Like, you could literally take like an off-the-shelf UPS that you bought at the Staples and plug it into this and get a little bit of battery. You could definitely do that if you wanted to. You have to watch out for the
idea is you want to take it back out of the car.
Yeah, exactly.
Sell it.
Right, exactly.
If you're not using it.
Not using it. Yeah. So. All right. Cool. Thanks.
A couple months back, I had this kind of idea, what I felt was a shortcoming in our facility. And it's something that I've seen more than one place that I've worked at. And it seems to be kind of a pain point. So I've seen these really great automated QC software for video files, MXF. They work really well, they're automated, they have APIs, they're great. But there seemed to be something missing. So I identified the problem. we have all this closed captioning, and we're doing it in Sidecar, not embedded. And there doesn't seem to be anything that takes care of having some kind of check. So to me, I thought it would be really great if we had some kind of simple system that could do automated checks for errors in closed captioning and potentially legalize it if it finds something wrong. So what you'd want out of a solution like this. So what I thought it would be really cool to have and kind of a must would be, well, we need to see what the errors are, hopefully correct them. An API would be great so that we have some automated way of getting into it. Watch folders as well, and erroneous data. Okay. So what's kind of out there that I feel falls short? Scopes. They work great, really only good for linear. Sometimes the errors are kind of a little tricky to figure out. So it kind of leaves you a little bit, okay, I see an error, what is it? And once again, for file-based, not much good. Auto QC, I mean, works great for video. Audio doesn't seem to be there for SCC. Doesn't really have anything for SCC files. So we have many MAM systems on the market. They can show the text. They can marry it video, and they can marry the video and audio together so we can look at it. But they don't really seem to analyze SCC at what I would say a deeper level. And the other problem is some of them that I've seen, they don't really seem to accurately show when they're playing out closed captioning where they're actually displaying. And that could be a problem potentially. You know, you don't want it blocking some important areas of the video if you can help it. And also, they don't seem to really show what type of captioning is actually being. They're just, from what I've seen, more generic. Here's captioning. Does the captioning line up with the video? So from kind of seeing and working with captioning, we've seen some problems. These problems can originate kind of, is there something about this SCC file that's problematic to the playout server? So there's a few instances, we'll get into more of those later. Or is it causing a problem with the viewer? Or is it both? So some of the kind of more things that we may forget to remember, some playout servers seem to have problems with line endings. You sit there, bash your head against the wall, everything looks fine. What is it? Well, you go in Notepad++ and you click and see, oh, the files that didn't work had Unix line endings. The other one is also, maybe they decided to put Unicode and the server wasn't ready to handle that or can't detect that. Yep. So, something got out of order here. Okay. So another question too is when you have SCC files, is there things in the SCC file that we don't want? Maybe we have an official spec that we want. So do we want to keep most broadcasters as track 1? That's all they want. Do you want to control your formatting? Do you want to say, hey, I don't want all kinds of colors. I want to keep everything kind of boring, white on black. XDS data, if it sneaks its way in there, that seems like something that most of us, we would want to generate dynamically and wouldn't want to have in the SCC file. Do we want our text flashing? Well, this seems kind of annoying to me. It would make it harder for someone to be able to see the text. And the other one is there are some defined reserved words. Should we just get rid of them so they don't cause problems? Okay. So this comes to what would be cool, having an API where you can submit jobs, you have a watch folder, put in extra information so that we're more integrated, and export kind of what our errors to, so that maybe you could integrate this into a MAM system. Okay, so how do we want to try to fix these things? Well, we want to look at the syntax, any missing control codes. The greatest example, the missing line ending that I've seen. Replace or remove any valid characters. Like we've also seen instances where somebody's script has gone awry and you have your hex data, and then after that you actually had, I believe there was an instance of HTML that had weirdly snuck its way into the file. And are there any kind of time code issues? Next slide. So when going through this project, I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I group errors together? So this is just a group of errors. Next slide. I'm not going to go through each one. The errors, some of these are basically ones that I have forced, so no matter what, it'll always alarm on this. Some are user configured or in the preset. Next slide, please. So you can kind of try to build kind of like a, I'm going to use the term shim for lack of a better word, what you want in your spec. Next slide. And so what do you want in your spec, and what do you want to try to avoid from coming into your facility? Next slide. Some more information there. Next slide. Okay, and yeah. Any questions? No?
Yeah.
And then also there's a brief demo. Sorry, yeah.
Have you looked at the digital production partnership quality control modes at all? Do you know the group? They're out of Europe. They're standardizing the quality control method. I'm just going to suggest that because they might be very interested in what you're talking about.
Okay.
Closed captioning and stuff is a big issue.
Yeah, it seems to be a real kind of pain point. Like it's there, things go wrong. Like there's been some very interesting kind of errors that have come up in closed captioning that I've seen. Apparently there was a place I worked at where the transcoder wasn't doing a very good job, and what it actually was doing was exporting files that were way outside of what the display, the decoder could actually see. So as a result, when it tried to display it, it was way off screen. And that's kind of a weird thing to actually detect. I have actually wrote in there to actually detect, are we out of what is considered visible range as well. It was listed in one of the errors. So I'm just going to quickly, so don't be too hard on the interface. I'm not a graphic designer. Some of it may look like jQuery. Yes, there is some aspects of jQuery. So basically, we have presets. So you assign a preset to a watch folder. You have a few different options that you can set that allow you kind of what more you're looking for. And then you can generate reports. So we can look at the report that's generated. This is a sample file that I put forward. Here's some things that it's come up with. And obviously it is caching that page because it should not look like that. Okay, and then we can view the file. So basically this is a file. I've got all the different lines. We can click on the line, and I tried to make this as, the idea was to make it as simple as possible for a non-technical person to actually be able to identify the issues. So you have your errors in the one side, and you actually have all of the different codes that are being sent in kind of a human readable format and what associated tracks they would belong to. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Any other questions? Or? Okay, thank you.
Very good.